Hi, my name is Maya, and I'll be teaching AP French, AP Chinese, and AP Chemistry. In terms of my experience with tutoring, I worked as an MYP science tutor between 8th and ninth grade, and then in 12th grade, I worked as a tutor in the Humanities Center, helping with English essays as well as AP Economics. So today I want to talk about the email reply for the AP French exam and just give a brief overview of how I think the best way to tackle it is. So first of all, on the screen, I just wanted to give a little example, and this is the email that I'll be referencing. And first I want to talk about the little intro that they give before the actual email. And I think this is something that a lot of people overlook, but is in fact so important to getting the best reply that you possibly can. So first of all, in the first thing that you see is the theme of the actual email, which in this case is la quête de soi. So that gives you the first hint about what you should be talking about in your email. And since la quête de soi is about yourself, your own journey, quest for self, essentially, you know that this is going to be an email where you have to talk about your own interests and about your sort of learning journey, things like that. The second thing that comes in the intro is an introduction to who is sending you the email. In this case, it is Laurent Barra, who is the director of the Ministry of Education and Higher Studies. And this is very important because you will need to directly address the sender in your email later on. Next is a sort of brief intro into what the subject of the email is. It's not very thorough, but at least you can have a slight idea of what you're talking about, which in this case is about an exchange trip or studying abroad in a university in Benin. So a quick look into the actual email itself. So a few things I want to point out off the bat are the additional details that are given in both the intro and towards the end. First of all, that there are two domains of study, both cultural and economic, and this is something to note as you might be asked to talk about it later. Next, the two questions that are given by the sender, and these are very important because they must be answered. It is a requirement, and that is essentially where most of your email will come from, will be answering those questions. The next thing, which sort of serves as another hint as to what you could talk about in your email, is the paragraph just after the questions, where it mentions that this is a trip or a journey aimed for allowing people to experience cultural exchange with the local community there. So I think this gives you a pretty big hint about some potential ideas where if you're answering the question why you want to study here, this could be something you could address. Cultural exchange and learning about different communities is something that's very important to address, as they've brought it up themselves in this email. Now, moving on. So I believe that the email can be written in three very simple steps. First of all, at the beginning, where you start with a greeting. And this is why we need to know who the sender of the email is, because we need to directly address them in the greeting. So for this email, we could use either Cher Monsieur Bada or Monsieur le Directeur. Both are appropriate, but we need to know first of all, the gender of the sender or what their position is in the company, or whoever is sending you the email. You need to know who they are so you can directly address them. Next is an opening sentence, and this will really solidify the formality of the email and give you a good starting tone. And I've given two examples here of sentences you could use. My tip is just to memorize them. You could choose another sentence, but make sure it's formal. And it can be applied regardless of the context of the email. So it's just to kind of introduce the intro paragraph a little bit better and establish some level of formality. Once you've said that sentence, you can then move on to giving more details to create a full intro, which basically means that just add any additional details about yourself for the email and its purposes. So in the case of this email, since it's a study abroad program, you could add details like, I've always wanted to study abroad, or I'm so excited to be offered the opportunity to go elsewhere to study. Something like this will really just bring your intro together. The next section is the middle section, which is kind of the meat of the entire email, as it's where most of the writing will happen. And you do two things in this section, and that is, one, answer the sender's questions, and two, pose your own questions. So in terms of answering the sender's questions, I think the most important thing is, first of all, you give a concrete answer, and second of all, that you really give more details about it. So for example, the first question in this email was, what is your interest in studying in West Africa? And you could really make up any answer at all, as long as you give some details about it. So you could say that I've always wanted to study in West Africa, or I'm really interested in the culture because I watched a video about it in class, or I learned about it at home. Something like that will really give you some more body and give you some more reasoning in your email that will make it much more solid for the readers. The next thing is to pose your own questions. And this is where it gets a bit different from maybe what we're used to doing in normal conversational French, is that we must use the conditional tense when posing questions. So usually we'd be used to saying something like pouvez-vous or est-ce que vous pouvez? But in this case, we want to in fact say pourriez-vous and use the conditional for that entire paragraph when you're posing your own questions, as it makes it much more formal and shows the AP readers that you know how to keep up that sort of level of exchange. The next section is the end, and this is very similar to the beginning in that I think you can memorize a few of the sentences and make it a lot easier. So I've given, again, two examples of salutations that you could use that are very formal and close off the email in a very, very solid way and very polite as well. So these also can be used, you can use the sender's actual name in there. So you could say, or their address rather, you could say, veuillez agréer, Monsieur Bada, mes salutations distinguées, and that works as well. And then after that, I think it's appropriate to add a little sort of one-word or two-word phrase that's really quick and is just above your name to sort of really finish off the email, like cordialement ou bien à vous, something like that, really simple, and ends the email. So I'll just show a very rough example of the format that I think would be appropriate for answering this email. In this case, we give a greeting, cher Monsieur Bada is what I've chosen, and then an intro sentence, je vous suis reconnaissante de m'avoir contacté, and then you give more details about why you're interested or what you've been looking for in a particular exchange program. The next paragraph, respond to the two questions asked, which were to address what makes you interested in studying West Africa, and also which domain of study are you interested in, economics or culture, and also give details about your answers to those questions. The next section is to pose your own questions, and as you can see, I've used j'aurais instead of j'ai to make it more formal, and this is, I think, a good idea for that entire paragraph. And then, of course, ask your own questions using the conditional tense to make it more polite. The next section is the salutation and the ending, which I've chosen veuillez agréer mes salutations distinguées. Of course, you can choose anything else. And then after that, I just have a short little closing sentence, bien à vous, and my name. And I think that really is the way to write the email in a very structured format that you can apply to really any of the emails and make the best of it and write the best email that you possibly can. Thank you for listening. I hope you learned something from this video about writing the email reply for AP French, and I look forward to working with you in the future.